Okay, for the watercolor techniques, we're gonna go over all these examples here. So you have a flat wash, glazing, lift off, wet on wet, and then value with 2 colors and value using 3 colors. So on your paper that was passed out, go ahead and trace these little black squares that are on the tables. Trace 4 on the top. Make sure you're putting them pretty close together, that way it all fits on there. And then in the bottom, you're tracing 2 of these rectangles. When you're done tracing them, go ahead and label them. So label the techniques that you see. It's okay if you write it inside, or if you choose to do it like this example, they wrote it on the side. So that's totally up to you, as long as you know the difference of each of these techniques. So I'm gonna go ahead and start on my first one. So for these, you don't have to add water to the paper. You're simply adding water on the brush. So here's my brush. Add a little bit of water. Select any color that you want to use for the first one, and then go ahead and paint it in. When you're painting, try to stay inside of the square as much as you can. That way you're practicing how to color nice and neat. If your brush, so like for example this one, it opens up a lot, so I'm just gonna switch it over to a different brush. So flat wash is simply water on your brush, grab a little bit of paint, and fill it in nice and neat. Spread the paint out. There we go. Another thing you could do if you're really trying to stay inside of the line, we could use tape. Painter's tape would work really well. Tape the edges, paint, and then peel off the tape. But just for this one, we're gonna use what we have and keep going with the flow. So that would be a good example for a flat wash. One solid color, nice and even. Okay, for glazing, we are painting it like a flat wash first, allowing it to dry for maybe 5 minutes, and then going back on top. So the example that I had here, they did yellow, let it dry, and then the black on top. It's a little bit fuzzy on the edges, so they probably could have given it a couple more minutes, but besides that, it's not too bad. So for this one, I'm gonna go ahead and switch my color over to blue. And you could pick any color you want. Okay, I'm gonna let it dry and then I'll come back to it in 5 minutes. The lift off technique, you could use that technique if you're trying to do clouds. So you put the blue first, before it dries you remove the clouds. Or let's say you messed up and your color is too dark, before it dries, come back in with a clean brush and try to wipe off as much as you can and remove the color. Or if you accidentally splash paint on a corner and you don't want that to be there, add water and wipe it off as soon as possible before it dries completely, because once it dries, you can't really erase the watercolor. So lift off, I'm gonna do clouds. So I want it to be blue for my sky. So water in my brush. I'm picking up paint. Notice this is dry. I didn't add anything underneath on the paper. So water on the brush, paint, and then filling your square. Try to have a dark blue, because if your blue is very light, you're not really gonna see where you're removing your clouds. So the darker the better. Okay, there we go. Before it dries, I'm gonna have my paper towel ready. Your brush, clean it, dry it, and you're wiping or lifting. Dry it on your paper towel. Wipe off the paint, dry it on your paper towel, and you're gonna repeat this for a couple of times until you like the way your cloud looks. So right here, keep going, and I'm gonna add one more cloud on the bottom. If it's not coming off, you could add just water to your brush, add water to it a little bit, and continue the same thing, wiping, drying, wipe and dry. It's not going to be 100% white, but you are able to see the difference from the clouds on that piece. Okay. So I'm going to let the glazing dry a little bit more. I'm going to jump over to square number 4. So wet on wet, you're adding water first. Clean water, make sure your water is clean. Add water inside of your square. And we're trying to do a tie-dye effect. Let me find an example to show you how it should look. When you're doing the tie-dye, try not to put too much colors because then it starts looking a little bit sloppy. So maybe just 2 colors will be good enough. So for example, this one right here, you could see the tie-dye with red and purple. So on mine, I already have the water. I'm gonna select red, and you're dabbing your brush. You're not going left to right, so just kind of let the paint drop on the water and dab. And then I'll add another color too. Small dabbing. Notice I'm not mixing my colors, I'm going around the colors. There we go, there's my tie-dye effect. If you don't get it right, don't worry, it's your first time doing it. The point is that you're trying, and hopefully some of y'all get it, and if you don't, it's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back to my glazing one. It's a little bit wet, so I'm just gonna fan it down a little bit. You could add a letter, a heart, anything that you want on top. The point of glazing is that your colors do not mix. So I have the blue. I'm gonna go ahead and go in with black and just spell the word art. Add a little heart. There we go. So that would be glazing. You could do glazing when the color underneath is lighter than the color on the top. So if I had blue and I'm trying to go back in with yellow, you're not really gonna see it as much. Here, let's try it and see if it works. Yeah, you could see it a little bit, not too much. So just be very careful when you're trying to mix 2 colors. Sometimes one won't show, but in this case, it looks kind of greenish, but you could see the colors didn't mix. And then our last 2, we're doing value. Value is the darkness and lightness of a color. In this case, we're painting, so you are fading your colors using water. So this half is going to be one color, the other half is a separate color. Make sure you're picking colors that are adjacent to each other on the color wheel. So red and orange would be a good combination. Blue and purple would be good. Yellow and green would be good. So you could see right here on my little paint palette, as long as they're next to each other, I could use them. If you're using colors across, like orange and blue, these 2 probably won't mix well together. You could try it, but FYI, it might not look good. So I'm gonna go ahead and use yellow, is the one I've been using. Half yellow. So I'm just picking up paint, water on my brush. You do not have to add water on the paper to start with. Now the other half is gonna be green. Okay, you don't want to leave it like that because there's a straight line down the middle. We want our colors to fade for a nice transition from one color to the other. So always fade your light color towards your dark, because if I start with green, the green is just going to overpower and cover up the entire yellow. So start from your light, up and down with a clean brush. Stay in the middle for a little bit. Fade these two together, kind of like a lime green. And you might get it the first time. If you don't, go back in, do it again. Up and down. There we go, close enough. We'll let that one dry. And then you could finish off the last one. So this ones don't take us too long. It's just a small little assignment to help you play around with different techniques and practice watercolor painting. So this is 3 colors, same thing, 3 colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. We could go from yellow to orange to red, like the sunset, these 3 colors. Or we could do red to purple to blue. I'm gonna go ahead and stick to the sunset colors. So starting off, a third is gonna be yellow, orange, and the last section is red. We don't want it to look like stripes. We want the transition. So clean your brush, dry your brush, start from light to dark. So light is yellow, up and down, blend it into your orange. Transition, orange, into red. Once again. There we go. And you are done with your painting. So it took me roughly 13 minutes to do this. It might take y'all longer than that. Just make sure you're following along to the video and you are finishing your watercolor techniques for this assignment.